Students, बात करेंगे about a variant of carrier sense multiple access or CSMA, which is called as carrier sense multiple access with collision detection, CSMA CD. Students, आप लोगों ने देखा था कि CSMA के केस में, carrier sense multiple access के केस में, there is no procedure that the stations can follow after a collision has occurred. So students, in this case of CSMA CD, it augments the CSMA protocol by defining how do we handle a collision. So students, the stations, after sending a particular frame, they sense the medium. They check the medium to see if the transmission was successful. And students, if they find out that there was a collision, the frame is automatically sent again because the station is actually sensing or listening to the medium to see if the transmission was successful or not. Students, in the slide, what you can see is the first bits that are transmitted by two stations. They actually come up with a collision in this particular case. And we need to study this to understand the CSMA CD better. So students, as you can see, when the first bits collide at T1, the station A has executed its persistent, whatever process that it's using, i.e. non-persistent or P persistent, and what it does, it starts sending the bits of its frame. So at time T1, what you see is that A start sending its frames. So the first bit of A is traveling, and the first bit of A, it has not reached C yet. So what happens is, at time T2, the first bit of the frame is still here. So what happens is, at time T2, C senses the medium, and it starts transmitting, and it starts sending the bits in the frame as well. Now students, when C starts sending the frame or the information, it is, because we are using a shared medium, it's transmitted in both directions. Now students, what happens is, at time T3, as you can see, the collision occurs sometime after time T2, which we are showing in this slide as time T3. So this is our collision point, and C detects this collision at time T3. And what it does is, it actually aborts. It stops transmitting any more data. Students, station C immediately, it aborts transmission, and then A detects this collision at time T4. So now C has detected the collision, and it has aborted the transmission at time T3. The station A has detected the collision, and that aborts as well at time T4 when it receives the first bit of C. And so what happens essentially is that both the stations, they abort the transmission and they stop throwing any more data onto the shared medium. So students, in this case, if you look at this example, A has transmitted for a duration of T4 minus T1, and C has transmitted for a duration of T3 minus T2 before they detect these collisions and then abort. So these are essentially our duration of the two transmissions. Transmission from A and transmission from C. So students, using these transmission times, what happens is, this is what we do, collision and abortion in CSMA CD. Students, as you can see, A detects collision and aborts, and then C detects collision and aborts as well, and then we are showing the occurrence of collision as well. Students, this is the flow diagram for the CSMA CD protocol, and it is pretty similar to the one that we use for pure Aloha, except that there are three differences. Students, in the first difference is the addition of the persistence method. Students, मैंने आपको I persistent, P persistent और non persistent methods के बारे में बताया था. So basically, we actually employ this particular persistent method before we transmit anything. Students, the second difference with Aloha is that of the frame transmission. So students, Aloha में मैंने आपको बताया था कि we first transmit the entire frame and then we wait for an acknowledgement. Students, in CSMA CD, transmission and collision detection, they are continuous process. As you can see, we have got a loop here. So this detection of collision in CSMA CD is a continuous process. We do not send the entire frame and then look for a collision. And if we do that, the sender, once it has sent the entire frame, will actually have to wait, and it won't have a copy of that frame to send again if the whole transmission has been sent. The third difference with pure Aloha, it's the sending of a short jamming signal, as you can see. And this jamming signal is to make sure that all the other stations become aware of the collision as well before retrying once the collision has happened. Students, very quickly, we have got different energy levels during the transmission, the idleness and collision. As you can see, we have got our transmission, a particular energy level, which is a 0 level when the channel is idle. This is represented by that. We have got a normal level once the station has successfully captured the channel and is sending the frame, and that is represented by this. And then we have got a high spike of energy, which is twice the normal size when a station has encountered a collision, and we represent that by using this particular slide, this particular collision out here. Students, as you can guess, the throughput of CSMA CD, is greater than the throughput of Aloha. And students, that's the reason this is traditional Ethernet that we are going to be talking about, which is also called as 10 megabits per second Ethernet. It's called as a standard Ethernet as well. It's called as traditional Ethernet as well. The first version of the Ethernet LAN technology that we came up with, it actually uses this particular carrier sense multiple access technology.